Hello, good people. It is great to be back with you. I want to talk to you today about what is going on in our country subsequent to the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis and all of the violence and all of the rioting, the looting, the peaceful protests that have also taken place that are not nearly as newsworthy, apparently, of course, as all of the violence that has happened. And, um, and I think that this incident is extremely important. And I think that it is different from all of the various incidences that are similar to it that have happened in the past. And I've been listening to a lot of commentary about this, as I'm sure all of you have also. I particularly appreciated some of the comments that were made by Daniel Smechtenberg on the Rebel Wisdom channel, and they had a kind of a big meeting or a conference or something online, and his comments were very much appreciated by me, at least. And also, I've really appreciated the intelligent and balanced commentary given about these things by Brett Weinstein and Heather Hine. I felt they gave very interesting and very wise commentary on these issues. But I do think that there is something that I have observed that I haven't heard anyone else mention. So maybe you can tell me what you think about this. I think that what makes this different from other incidences that have been in the news in the past, say 10, 15 years, where there have been either alleged or proven, demonstrated police brutality and even police violence against Black people in our population. I think there is something that is very different about this incident, and I think that this is difference that I'm observing may be part of the reason why this particular incident has prompted the kind of reaction that it has, and why I think that it's striking a nerve in a very different way, much deeper. It's getting into the consciousness of people in a much different way. And I think this has to do with the power of an iconic image. Now, if I think back through my life and various things that have been in the news over my lifetime, I can remember certain iconic images. So one of the iconic images that I recall is the little son of John F. Kennedy saluting his father's funeral carriage as it went past him in Washington after the assassination of John Kennedy. I remember, of course, the iconic image of the landing on the moon, when the astronauts went to the moon. I remember the iconic image during protests in China of the man standing in front of the tank. I remember the image during the Vietnam War. I remember the image of the little girl who was running away from the village, from the napalm bombing of her village. I remember the Kent State killings where the National Guard was called in to quell student protests and 4 students ended up being shot. I remember one iconic image from the student protests against the Vietnam War of some girl putting a daisy flower into the barrel of a gun that was held either by a cop or by one of the National Guardsmen. So I remember these kind of iconic images. The movie Forrest Gump really played a lot with these images of American history since the 50s and really highlighted some of those very iconic images that we all remember. And that's what I think has happened here. I don't think that any of the other incidents of the police overstepping their authority or overstepping the bounds of uh, their their proper behavior with citizens when it comes to Black citizens, their interaction with them, or any of the incidences even where there have been shootings or killings. I don't think that since the protests, since the civil rights protests of the 1960s, where we have certain iconic images that we remember, I don't think that in this century, in the 21st century, and even the last probably 20 or 30 years of the 20th century, have we had an iconic image come forth from this particular racial situation in our country that we have now. And this to me seems like it is a similar image, like the children who are going to school, being guarded from all of the white people who are trying to keep them from getting into the school, and some of the other iconic images that we have from the civil rights movement in the 60s. I think that in this image of the police officer kneeling on the neck of George Floyd, that we have an iconic image. So what is it that makes this image iconic? Well, think about this. If you were to describe the oppressive situation that Black people have been in the United States, and I'm not addressing whether or not this is a current situation, but if you go back, just say, to the 1960s and go before that for several hundred years, you cannot argue that there was oppression and injustice. And before that, you go back another 100 years, there's slavery, obviously terrible injustice and terrible cruelty. If you were to describe the relationship of Black Americans, Black people in this country to white Americans, and you were to describe it as the white man being on the neck of the Black man, you can see how that description would be emotionally apt, and that it would really be descriptive of a situation in a deep, visceral way. And that is why I think that this particular image is going to strike so deeply within the psyche of everyone involved, whether it's Black Americans, white Americans, interracial Americans. I have interracial children, and they have to deal with all of this stuff and look at the whole history of everything and be caught up in the question of identity and everything themselves. So I do think that this particular image is going to end up being iconic, and that it is already iconic, because it's possible to look at that image and see not just two men, but two people. And by people, I mean races. It's possible to see them as representative in that moment and in that picture. And so I think that this is why this particular situation has created the kind of emotion that it has created. It is an iconic image, and so it is going to bring forth deeper feelings, but it's also going to strike at our consciousness in an unconscious way, because it's an iconic image. So that's my thought about it. I think that this is going to be something that really may bring forth some actual change in some way. I don't know whether the change is going to be good or whether it's going to be bad, but this is something that we will not ever forget, just like we have not forgotten those other iconic historical images that I still remember from my lifetime, and I'm sure you remember too. So that's my thought about it. I think I haven't heard anyone mention the power of an iconic image that is coming forth from this incident, and I'm interested to know what you think about it. You can tell me in the comments. So in the meantime, until we're together again, treat yourself as though you are someone you are responsible for helping, because you are responsible. So am I, and together we are making the world. And bye for now. Thanks so much for watching.